This is not just another video. This is a divine wake-up call. If you've been betrayed by the people you trusted most, if the ones who were supposed to protect you walked away without a word, if the ones you loved, the ones you would have given everything for, ended up handing you the deepest wounds, then hear me clearly. You were not betrayed by accident. You were betrayed by design. It wasn't a failure. It wasn't injustice. It wasn't weakness. It was training, celestial, precise, necessary. Because before God uses a chosen one, He doesn't celebrate them. He breaks them. He purifies them. He sets them on fire from the inside out. And the flame He chooses most often is betrayal. Not just to hurt, but to awaken. Not just to test you, but to reveal who you truly are under pressure. This is not just your pain. This is your prophecy unfolding. And what you thought would end you was actually the door into your next dimension. So stay with me. Every second matters. Because in this message, I'm going to uncover 5 divine betrayals that every true chosen one walks through before being used by God in power. This will not be comfortable, but it will be awakening. And by the end of this video, you will not only understand your pain, you will command purpose from it. If you're already feeling the fire move in your spirit, comment below right now. I was betrayed, but I was not stopped. And if this word finds you at the exact moment you needed it, don't let it pass you by. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and comment the number 99 below, because 99 means God left the crowd to come for you. Now take a breath, because what comes next will break every illusion you've carried about your suffering. Say the word, and I'll begin the first betrayal. They carried your blood, but rejected your fire. There's a special kind of pain that doesn't bleed on the outside, but echoes for years in silence. It's not the wound of an enemy. It's not the betrayal of a stranger. It's the ache of being rejected by your own family, by the people who were supposed to be your first home. They carried your blood, but they couldn't carry your vision. They saw your face, but they never recognized your fire. And maybe you've asked yourself, why didn't they protect me? Why didn't they believe in me? Why did they laugh when I spoke truth? But here's the revelation. They weren't blind by accident. They were spiritually incapable of perceiving your assignment. Because your calling didn't come from their design. It came from God's throne. Joseph wasn't betrayed by Egyptians. He was betrayed by those who shared his last name, those who ate at his table, those who knew his dreams and hated him because of them. And just like Joseph, you weren't hurt by your enemies. You were sold out by your brothers. Not because you were arrogant, not because you were broken, but because what you carry terrified their comfort. You were born in their house, but you were never meant to die in their system. So God allowed a divine fracture. He allowed you to be misunderstood, mocked, excluded from conversations, left out of family moments, because He was calling you out of the familiar. What felt like rejection was actually a redirection, a spiritual migration away from the shallow into the deep. If they had celebrated you, you would have stayed. If they had affirmed you, you would have conformed. But God had to break your heart to unlock your mantle. This betrayal wasn't punishment. It was preservation. You see, comfort is the greatest threat to calling. And when God saw that their approval was muting your mission, He allowed their silence to set you free. You thought they left because you weren't enough. But the truth is, they left because you were too much for the room you were born in. Your sensitivity wasn't weakness. It was discernment. Your tears weren't drama. They were prophecy. You didn't fit in, not because you were broken, but because you were set apart. And I need you to hear this with all your spirit. The same ones who denied you will one day witness your unveiling. But by then, their validation won't matter, because you'll no longer need it. You'll be walking in something far greater, the full weight of your divine identity. So don't curse the wound. Don't hate the silence. Don't grieve the rejection forever. Honor the pain. It shaped the prophet. Because the family that rejected you was simply the soil that birthed you. But you were born for higher ground. And now that you know, now that the illusion is shattered, let me take you to the next betrayal. It wasn't from those who shared your blood. It came from someone who once called you son. A voice that guided you. A hand that trained you. A heart that turned cold. You trusted them with your growth, and they tried to destroy your wings. The betrayal of the mentor is next, and it's deeper than you think. Shall we go there? The one who trained you turned against you. There's a betrayal that cuts deeper than blood because it carries the weight of trust. It's not just the wound of abandonment. It's the disorientation of being attacked by the one who once called you chosen. They trained you. They saw the potential in your eyes when no one else did. They laid hands on your shoulders and said, "You have something rare." And for a while, you believed their voice was safe. You honored them. You served them. You protected their flaws. You defended their name in rooms where they never even defended yours. But something shifted. The more your anointing grew, the more their silence did too. The more heaven confirmed you, the more they avoided your name. And when your fire became too visible, they tried to smother it. Why? Because the old system fears the new fire. Because some mentors don't prepare you to rise. They prepare you to stay beneath them. And the moment you began to glow with divine oil, their admiration turned to intimidation, just like Saul with David. David never raised his sword. He served with loyalty. He played to soothe Saul's torment. But when heaven's hand began to shift, Saul's jealousy erupted. Not because David did wrong, but because David's time had come. And you walked into that same battlefield, not with a sword, but with honor, not with rebellion, but with reverence. Yet they still threw spears. Because they didn't just see your growth. They saw their throne shaking. They didn't just hear your voice. They heard God whispering, "I'm doing something new." And when that happens, the system panics. They'll label you as proud, call you unteachable, accuse you of rebellion, all because you no longer fit inside the mold they created. But let me make something clear. You were not called to be a copy. You were born to be a catalyst. God never intended for you to die inside someone else's shadow. So he used their betrayal not to break your spirit, but to break your dependency. You don't need their approval. You don't need their stage. You don't need their network. You carry something they didn't give you, and therefore they cannot take away. This wasn't rejection. This was heaven revoking your permission to settle. Because if you had stayed under their wing too long, you would have confused their mentorship with God's voice. You would have mistaken their direction for divine instruction. And God loves you too much to let you worship a system he's trying to shake. So yes, it hurt. Yes, it confused you. Yes, it felt like betrayal wrapped in a robe. But behind that pain was precision. Behind that confusion was consecration. And behind that betrayal was a burning bush calling your name alone. The same way Elijah had to leave the system. The same way John the Baptist preached from the wilderness. The same way Jesus didn't graduate from the synagogue. You too were called out. Not because you were wrong, but because you're dangerous to the status quo. So don't look back. Don't shrink to keep old teachers comfortable. And don't let their silence stop your song. Because what's coming next will require you to hear God's voice without echo, to walk without a crutch, to burn without permission. You were never meant to stay in Saul's palace. You were meant to build your own altar, and you won't do it with borrowed oil. You'll do it with what God forged in the furnace of betrayal. Now take a breath. Because if being rejected by a mentor felt like death, what comes next will pierce even deeper. The betrayal of someone you called friend. They knew your secrets. They held your tears. they shared your table. And when the time came, they handed you over with a smile. Let's go there. The kiss hurt more than the sword. There's a betrayal that doesn't come with a scream. It comes with a smile. It doesn't arrive from far away. It walks straight into your heart, with full access and full awareness. This one isn't from a distant critic. It isn't from a jealous observer. It's from the one who called you brother, the one who shared your table, finished your sentences, saw you cry, and promised they'd never leave. But they did. Not only did they leave, they used what you gave them to wound you. They knew your weaknesses. They knew your battles. They knew the exact places where your armor was thin, because you trusted them to stand guard. Instead, they chose to strike there. They didn't stab you in the back. They kissed you on the cheek, like Judas in Gethsemane. A gesture that looked like love, but concealed betrayal. And that's what makes this wound different. It's not just about what they did. It's about who they were when they did it. They saw you at your lowest. You shared your dreams, your fears, your destiny whispers, only for them to later weaponize your transparency. You thought you were building something eternal. They were looking for an opportunity. And when your elevation began, so did their envy. They couldn't handle your glow, not because it blinded them, but because it exposed their shadows. See, not everyone who walks with you walks with clean intentions. Some only walk with you while you're down. But the moment you start to rise, they switch sides. Because your success triggers their hidden wounds. Your progress threatens their passivity. Your clarity confronts their confusion. And so, rather than celebrate you, they assassinate you with familiarity. They leak your secrets. They distort your motives. They tell others, I knew them before all this. Not because they honor your story, but because they can't handle the fact that God chose you to rise and not them. But let me shift your perspective. This betrayal did not end you. It exposed what God needed you to confront. Not everyone who is loyal to your presence is loyal to your purpose. And before God takes you into your next season, He cleans the table. He filters the room. He removes those who are only there for access, but not equipped to protect your assignment. Judas had to leave before Jesus could reveal His glory. And your Judas? They had to walk away too. Not because you're unlovable, but because your destiny became too heavy for them to carry. This betrayal didn't disqualify you. It qualified your circle. You don't need a crowd. You need covenant. You don't need followers. You need warriors. And this betrayal, as painful as it was divine alignment, disguised as heartbreak. You were never meant to carry your next mantle with compromised company. So don't mourn the loss forever. Don't keep replaying the conversations. Don't keep wondering what you did wrong. You didn't fail. God simply turned the lights on and revealed who never truly stood with you. And from now on, you will no longer trust based on charisma, but on fruit. No more naive loyalty. No more emotional attachments to empty vessels. From this point forward, you walk with discernment, not desperation. You now know. Some friendships expire before the promise arrives, so your destiny doesn't get contaminated. And if you're still breathing after this kind of betrayal, it means the fire didn't kill you. It purified you. But what happens when betrayal doesn't come from the outside at all? What if the next wound comes from within you? What if the enemy isn't a friend, a mentor, or a sibling, but your own reflection? The next betrayal is the one nobody wants to talk about, because it hides in silence. It whispers in moments of weakness, and it disguises itself as logic when it's actually fear. Get ready, because the next one is the betrayal of yourself. They praised you yesterday and crucified you today. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't come with a blade, but it leaves you bleeding all the same. It's the betrayal of the masses. The betrayal of the applause that turns to silence, of the people who once called you anointed and now act like they never knew your name. Jesus lived it. He walked into Jerusalem to the sound of Hosanna. People waving palms, laying garments, calling him king. But just a few days later, those same mouths shouted, "Crucify him." Not because he failed, but because he exposed what they weren't ready to face. And if you're a chosen one, you've felt this emotional whiplash. One moment, they call you inspired, gifted, a voice for this generation. But the moment you speak uncomfortable truth, they vanish. They stop sharing your words. They unfollow. They whisper behind your back. Why? Because your authenticity began to confront their convenience. The crowd doesn't love the real you. The crowd loves the version of you that makes them feel good without challenging their comfort. But the real danger isn't the betrayal of the crowd. It's when you start to believe them. It's the voice in your own mind that says, maybe I'm not chosen anymore. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I've already ruined what God had for me. And that voice, that silent, relentless voice, is the most dangerous betrayal of all. Because when the crowd walks away, you still have God. But when you walk away from yourself, you begin to disconnect from the very reason you were sent. It's not the public shame that cripples you. It's the private self-doubt, that part of you that preaches fire by day, but collapses in exhaustion by night. That side of you that pours into others, but questions if God really sees you anymore. Elijah called fire from heaven, and the next day he was under a tree asking God to end his life. Not because he lost faith in God, but because he lost belief in himself. Peter walked on water, saw the dead rise, watched the blind see, and still he denied Jesus 3 times. Not because he didn't love him, but because fear shouted louder than faith in that moment. You've been there. You've questioned everything. You've stared at your reflection and thought, why would God use someone like me? You felt like an imposter in your own calling. But let me speak life into that battlefield inside you. You are not your doubts. You are not your mistakes. You are not your low moments. You are your mission. You are your assignment. You are the product of divine fire that didn't just anoint you, it branded you. The betrayal of yourself is not the end. It's the threshing floor. It's the place where your ego breaks and your spirit begins to rise. God isn't afraid of your questions. He's not threatened by your weakness. In fact, he does his best work in broken vessels who are honest enough to say, I need you. He knew you'd struggle. He factored in your breakdowns before he ever released your mantle. And he still chose you. Let that sink in. He still chose you. So don't disqualify what heaven already stamped. Don't silence the voice he's trying to amplify. Don't bury your purpose because of temporary insecurity. Your inner war is part of the process. And that war is making you lethal, not just to hell, but to every lie that ever told you you're not enough. And now, if you've survived the betrayal of the crowd and you've faced the mirror with trembling hands, then there's one more betrayal you need to hear. The one that doesn't just pierce your heart, it sets it on fire. Because after you've been betrayed by the world, and even by your own voice, there's a divine shift coming, where God turns every scar into evidence of power. Are you ready for the final transformation? Because what comes next is not a breakdown. It's a public resurrection. Let's finish this. If you're still standing, glory is coming. There's something sacred about survival, but there's something even more powerful about resurrection. You've been betrayed. You've been broken. You've been abandoned, attacked, misunderstood, and pushed to the edge. Not once, not twice, but over and over again. And yet, you're still standing. Not because it was easy, not because you had all the answers, but because heaven refused to let you die in the fire that was meant to awaken you. You see, there's a point in every chosen one story where the betrayal becomes more than pain. It becomes the birthplace of power. What once looked like tragedy suddenly becomes training. What once looked like death becomes divine preparation. Joseph was thrown into a pit by his brothers, but he didn't stay there. The same hands that hurt him couldn't stop the hand of God that lifted him. From pit to prison to palace, his scars became keys. David was hunted, hidden, hated. He lived in caves, fleeing from the very man he once served. But he didn't remain underground. The same fields he worshipped in prepared him for a throne only the broken could carry. And Jesus, betrayed by a kiss, abandoned by friends, crucified by a crowd, he didn't stay in the grave. He rose, but not in the same form. He came back with glory in his breath and fire in his voice. His wounds didn't disappear. They preached resurrection. And you? You are not the exception. If you've survived the pit, if you've cried in caves, if you've stared into the mirror, wondering if you'd ever recover, this is your sign. You're about to rise, but not like before. Not as a victim of betrayal, not as someone trying to prove their worth. You will rise as a vessel, a walking, breathing testimony that betrayal didn't break you. It built you. Every scar on your soul is a sermon. Every time you forgave without closure. Every time you stayed quiet when you could have exploded. Every time you got up when no one clapped. Heaven was watching. You weren't surviving. You were being forged. And now you are dangerous. Not because you're loud, but because you carry a silence that speaks louder than chaos. Not because you're perfect, but because you've been through what hell thought would finish you and came out glowing. God is not using you despite the betrayals. He is using you through them. Every dagger, every rejection, every betrayal was a chisel in his hand, carving out a spirit that can't be manipulated, bought, or broken. You are no longer the same. You've seen too much. You've died to too many illusions. You've graduated from needing approval. Because now, you walk with divine authority. And let me tell you what the enemy fears most. Not your past, not your pain, but the version of you that emerges after the betrayal. He fears the you that knows who you are, the you that stopped apologizing, the you that no longer needs a crowd to feel called, the you that walks into rooms not seeking validation, but carrying fire. If you're still breathing, if you're still listening to this, if something deep in your spirit is rising right now, it's because glory is near. This is not your breakdown. This is your unveiling. But before we close, before we seal this with fire, there is one more thing you need to declare, because what you say in this moment will echo in the spirit. Take a breath, feel it, and when you're ready, we'll step into the final moment where everything you've endured finds its meaning. Let's finish this together. What they meant to use against you, God is now using through you. The daggers that pierced you, the silence that suffocated you, the storms that almost ended you, have now become the weapons in your hands. You were not broken. You were rebuilt. You were not disqualified. You were distinguished. Every betrayal was a blueprint. Every tear was an activation. Every moment you thought it was over, heaven was just getting started. You are not here to beg for a seat at any table. You are the table. You are not here to chase validation. You are the proof. You are not here to seek approval. You are here to carry fire. And now, hell has a problem. Because the one they tried to bury is still breathing, still walking, still chosen, still anointed. You are no longer a question mark. You are an exclamation from heaven. You are the echo of prophecy, the answer to prayers your ancestors cried in silence, the living evidence that God wastes nothing. So rise. Rise with conviction. Rise with scars that shine. Rise with a mantle that no betrayal could cancel. Because your story is not survival. It is strategy. And from this moment forward, You do not walk timidly. You walk as one who has been forged by fire.